Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Originally I wanted to get into the book Guns, Germs, and Steel, as I had mentioned in a previous video, but I realized that we really need to start at the beginning. And I mean the true beginning, not just land formations, but the idea of creation. What is a creation story? A creation myth, or creation story, is a cultural, religious, or traditional myth which describes the earliest beginnings of the present world. Creation myths are a most common form of myth, usually developing first in oral traditions and are found throughout human culture. The creation myth is usually regarded by those who subscribe to it as conveying profound truths, though not necessarily an historical or literal sense. They are commonly, though not always, considered cosmological myths. That is, they describe the ordering of the cosmos from a state of chaos or of morphosis. Why a creation story as a starting point? When it comes to the formation of the earth, there are only two theories. Every other is based off of those two: intelligent design versus evolution. To put it simply, the debate between intelligent design and evolution is this: did the world, and by extension the universe, come into being through randomness, or was there intelligence behind it? Every creation story is a form of intelligent design, as seen with the word creation. Of course, both are valid forms when it comes to how your world came into being, but if you want your world to be formed via evolution, it doesn't make sense to have it as part of your story. In fact, if your creation doesn't have an impact on the plot, you should think about whether it needs to be included at all, just like every other world-building element. That being said, it might be valuable for you to have a creation story outline to use in a wiki or other supplemental information locations, such as an appendix. Today we will be going over a few different creation stories from across the world, as well as a couple from literature, such as J.R.R. Tolkien's. The first one we'll be looking at is the biblical creation story. As a Christian, it is the one I'm most familiar with, and while it is found in the Bible, it is the same basic story as other Abrahamic religions such as Judaism and Islam. Biblical creation story. The Genesis creation narrative is the creation myth of both Judaism and Christianity. The narrative is made up of two stories, roughly equivalent to the first two chapters of the book of Genesis. In the first, Elohim, the Hebrew generic word for God, creates the heavens and the earth in 6 days, then rests on, blesses, and sanctifies the seventh, i.e. the biblical Sabbath. In the second story, God, now referred to by the personal name Yahweh, creates Adam, the first man, from dust and places him in the Garden of Eden. There he is given dominion over the animals. Eve, the first woman, is created from Adam's rib as his companion. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved across the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And he called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. The first 3 chapters of the Bible go into detail of not only how the world was created, but also the formation of man, and how sin first came into the world. Of all the creation stories, this is the one people are going to be most familiar with. One note to point out: what sometimes causes people to get slipped up with the idea of biblical creation is adaptation. The idea of microevolution or small evolution is compatible with this creation story, while macroevolution, big evolution, is not. The difference comes down to the phrase in chapter 2, after its own kind. If we take a look at the taxonomic hierarchy, we can see that we can group organisms based on similarities. If we take the idea that every organism can crossbreed with another from another branch of the taxonomic hierarchy, as long as they are close enough, this is what is called after their own kind means. According to this theory, every organism below the family classification could all share the same ancestors, just like how every domesticated dog breed comes from wolves. The Greek-Roman creation story. In the beginning there was chaos, a yawning nothingness. Out of the void emerged Gaia, the earth, and the other divine beings: Eros, love; the abyss, part of the underworld; and Erebus, the unknowable place where death dwells. Without male assistance, Gaia gave birth to Uranus, the sky, who then fertilized her. From that union, the first Titans were born: 6 males, Coeus, Crinus, Cronus, Hyperion, Eptuus, and Oceanus, and 6 females: Mesoene, Phoebe, Rhea, Thea, Themis, and Thais. After Cronus, Time, was born, Gaia and Uranus decreed no more Titans were to be born. While in the biblical creation story, God created everything out of nothing, the Greek, and by extension the Roman, creation story starts with chaos rather than nothing, and from chaos comes Gaia, Eros, the Abyss, and Erebus. After Gaia gives birth to Uranus, the two have more children called the Titans. From the Titan Cronus, the pantheon of gods come. From the beginning, there was a conflict between the divine beings, the Titans, and the gods. One son of Titans, Prometheus, did not fight with the fellow Titans against Zeus and was spared imprisonment. He was given the task of creating man. Prometheus shaped man out of mud, and Athena breathed life into the clay figure. Prometheus made man stand upright as the gods did and gave him fire. Prometheus tricked Zeus, and to punish him, Zeus created Pandora, the first woman of stunning beauty, wealth, and a deceptive heart, and a lying tongue. He also gave Pandora a box she was commanded never to open, but eventually her curiosity got the best of her. She opened the box and released all kinds of evil, plagues, sorrows, and misfortunes, and also hope, which lay at the bottom of the box. Here is the formation of humans and how evil first came into the world, though the gods and the Titans already had a war beforehand, which I find interesting because the world wasn't perfect before as it was in the biblical creation story. The Egyptian creation story. The story describes how the sun god Ra, also called Autumn, created his son Shu and daughter Tophet, and they worked together to create order in Nu, the chaos of the universe. They created humans from tears of happiness and then made Ya, the moon, Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. Geb and Nut had 4 children, 2 gods, 2 goddesses, who represented the 4 forces of life. They were Osiris, the god of fertility, Isis, the mother goddess, Set, the god of evil, Nephis, the goddess of death. The Egyptian creation story is pretty straightforward as it comes to the formation of the world, and while it shows the human race came into being, it puts the idea that evil is just a natural part of living on the earth, whereas the biblical and the Greek and Roman narratives mention that evil wasn't present before humans. The Chinese creation story. In the beginning was a huge egg containing chaos, a mixture of yin and yang, female, male, aggressive, passive, cold, hot, dark, light, wet, dry. Within this yin and yang was Pangao, who broke forth from the egg as a giant who separated chaos into the many opposites including earth and sky. Pangao stood in the middle, his head touching the sky, his feet planted on the earth. The heavens and earth began to grow at the rate of 10 feet per day, and Pangao grew along with them. After another 18,000 years, the sky was higher and the earth was thicker. Pangao stood between them like a pillar, 30,000 miles in height, so they could never again join. When Pangao died, his skull became the top of the sky, his breath became the wind and clouds, his voice became rolling thunder. One eye became the sun, the other the moon. His body and limbs turned into 5 big mountains, and his blood formed the roaring water. His vein became roads, his muscles turned into fertile land. The innumerable stars came from his hair and beard, and flowers and trees from his skin. His marrow turned to jade and pearls. His sweat flowed like good rain and sweet dew that nourishes all things on earth. Some people say that the fleas and lice on his body became the ancestors of humanity. In the Chinese story, there was an order to the Chinese singularity, that everything was paired with its opposites, and it wasn't until Pangao appeared that things began to take shape. The Japanese creation story. Long ago, all the elements were mixed together with one germ of life. This germ began to mix things around and around until the heavier part sank and the lighter part rose. A muddy sea that covered the entire earth was created. From this ocean grew a green shoot. It grew and grew until it reached the clouds, and there it transformed into a god. Soon, this god grew lonely and began to create other gods. The last 2 gods it made was Zengi and Izanami, were the most remarkable. One day, as they were walking along, they looked down at the ocean and wondered what was beneath it. Izagani thrust his staff into the waters, and as he pulled it back, some clumps of mud fell back into the sea. They began to harden and grow until they became the islands of Japan. The 2 descended to these islands and began to explore, each going in different directions. They created all kinds of plants. When they met again, they decided to marry and have children to inhabit the land. The first child, Izagami, bore was a girl of radiant beauty. The gods decided she was too beautiful to live in Japan, so they put her up in the sky and she became the sun. Their second daughter, Tsukumi Yami, became the moon, and their third and unruly son, Sosuwo, was sentenced to the sea, where he creates storms. Later, their first child, Adamarusu, bore a son who became the Emperor of Japan, and all emperors since then have claimed descendant from him. One of the things I find interesting in the Japanese creation story is it not only describes the creation of Japan, but also how it was populated. In addition to this, the story is the basis of the emperor's power, though any study of the political history of Japan knows that he has any real power. And for the most recent history, it has been little more than a figurehead with no power at all. The Hawaiian creation story. In the beginning, there was only endless darkness. Out of this darkness, two beings were born. The male, Kamlupo, whose name means essence of darkness, and the female, Po'ole, whose name means darkness itself. These two created all the creatures in total darkness. The shellfish that lives at the very bottom of the ocean floor, the plants that grow during the dark of night, and the grubs that burrow into the earth. As these creatures were born, the dark became slightly lighter. The first beings gave birth to the male Pauulini, whose name means deep darkness, and the female Pauulini, whose name means darkness with a little light. This couple created all the creatures of the almost darkness. They created the fish that swim deep in the seas and land creatures that live in almost darkness. They created the fish that swim deep in the seas and land that creatures live in almost in darkness. These dark creatures had offspring, and from every new life, the deep darkness of this world got a little brighter. The second couple gave birth to a third, the male Polei, whose name means night, and female Poaha, whose name means coming into dawn. These two created the creatures of darkness near dawn, the insects that fly by night, the caterpillar, the grasshopper, and a large egg. The egg hatched into thousands of birds. These were the birds that fly and sing in the hours just before dawn. The fish, the birds, and the insects all had offspring. Each new creature added some light to the darkness, until it was getting closer to the light we have in the hours before dawn. Next to be born were Papano and Polaleni, who gave birth to sea turtles, lobsters, and other shellfish that live in shallow waters in near darkness. They gave birth to the male Poheleno and the female Poihehaku, their names meaning night ending. They produced the rat, Pole, and Kaminupua, the pig, both creatures of day and night. By this time, it was almost dawn, and the earth was already buzzing with life from so many creations. These two created the first dawn, and light finally came into the world. The first man, Kae, and the first woman, Lalela, were born. They were both dark since they were born just at dawn. The first man and first woman had many children. With each generation, their skins became lighter and lighter until they become the color they are now. The Hawaiian creation story is one of the more unique stories so far, with the idea of progression being the pillar of the story, to go from the state of darkness to the state of lightness, from a progress of simple to complex. Alright everyone, first I want to apologize for mispronouncing those names. Also, I just want to let you know that we are going to be looking at a second part on Thursday. There was a lot more than I was expecting. So I will be doing the Aztec creation story and then be getting into the literary creation stories. I hope you'll join me. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comments below. As always, I will be linking the resources I use in the description. Until next time, bye.
I am a poor, wayfaring stranger. I'm traveling through this world of woe, yet there's no sickness, toil, nor danger in that bright land to which I go.